What's good, kinfolk? It's your boy, Screwface Capone, in the building. Last weekend was the Summer Games Fest, also known as Not E3. There were several big game announcements for the next 12 months and beyond. I pulled together 15 of the bigger announcements, and we're going to dive right into those. You can find chapters below if there's a part that you want to skip to. If you haven't done so, please subscribe and click the bell icon so you can see more game content. Let's get things started, and I'll see you at the end of the video. At the Summer Games Fest kickoff, a brand new video game in the Alien franchise was revealed. Coming next year from French developer Thanalos Interactive and publisher Focus Entertainment and 20th Century Games, Aliens Dark Descent is an all-new story in the Alien franchise. The game will be a single-player top-down isometric squad shooter in which players take on xenomorphs as they explore a stranded spaceship. Hopefully, Dark Descent will end up being the Alien game we've all been waiting for. The franchise has been having a bit of a bad run since the infamous Colonial Marines. Around the same time, Sega cancelled Alien Crucible, which was an action RPG from developer Obsidian. Thankfully, 2014's Alien Isolation was a high point for the franchise when it came to gaming. Alien Isolation was a survival horror game that was praised for both its dark atmosphere, which was similar to the first movie, and its innovative alien AI. Since then, there have been a series of mobile games that gained little attention. Last year, of course, Aliens Fireteam Elite was released, and it was okay. The multiplayer squad-based shooter had a mixed reaction, but it was a fun Left 4 Dead multiplayer shooter, and it wasn't nearly as bad as Colonial Marines. Speaking of Alien Fireteam, it's getting an expansion this August entitled Pathogen. In this new expansion, players will not only have to contend with new xenomorphs, but they will also have to deal with a virus. Even with its flaws, I enjoyed Elite, so no doubt I'll take a look at the expansion when it launches on August 30th. At the least, it'll help tide players over until Dark Descent comes out. Speaking of aliens, space horror games seem to be the biggest theme of this summer's Game Fest. Although we didn't see anything new from the Dead Space remake, we did see a lot of potential successors, not the least of which, of course, is the Calisto protocol. Striking Distance Studios, the game's developer, gave us the first look at Callisto Protocol's gameplay. Striking Distance is made up of developers who worked on the original Dead Space, and you can tell. If you look at the trailer and the gameplay footage, you can see it's got the body horror, the small cramped quarters, and the blood and gore, so fans of Dead Space will feel right at home. Forza Solis was another sci-fi horror game that was revealed at the Games Fest kickoff. Starring video game voice actors Troy Baker and Roger Clark, Forza Solis will put players in the role of an engineer who's exploring a Martian mining outpost. Taking place over the course of a night, players investigate the outpost to find out what's wrong. Developed by Fallen Leaf and Black Drakkar Games, Forza Solis will feature Unreal Engine 5 powered graphics and a narrative with multiple outcomes. As of now, it doesn't have a set release date, and it's coming to PC via Steam. Finally, Routine, a sci-fi horror game that's been in development for 10 years, was revealed at Games Fest. Published by Raw Fury and developed by Lunar Software, Routine takes place in a world that can best be described as the future as it was imagined during the 80s. Players explore an abandoned lunar base while avoiding the robots and other horrors that prowl around the place. Players will have what's called a cosmonaut assistance tool that they can use to hack the various computers and devices throughout the game. Routine has an interesting history. The game was originally announced in 2012 with a 2014 release date. However, in 2016, the project went silent and everyone assumed that it was cancelled. All of a sudden, during the Summer Games Fest, the game reappeared, and it was completely different from the Dead Space clone that they showed off all those years ago. It was revealed that they had a near-finished product in 2016, but they decided to scrap it and make something new and original. Personally, this looks to be for the better as it will help the game stand out. The game is scheduled to launch on PC and Xbox platforms at some point in the future. As a matter of fact, it will be coming to Game Pass at launch when it hits Xbox. A 30-year-old video game franchise is getting its third entry later this year. Flashback 2 was announced at the Summer Games Fest kickoff, and despite its title, it's actually the third mainline entry in the series, as it's a follow-up to the 1995's Fate in Black. This new game will be a 2D side-scrolling adventure game, similar to the original Flashback, and once again, players will take control of Conrad as he battles the alien race known as the Morphs. Flashback is one of the more obscure titles from the 16-bit era, so here's a brief overview. Developed by Studio Delphine Software, the original Flashback released in 1992 for the Amiga, and it came to the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis the following year. Flashback was a unique game for its time. It was a 2D platform with puzzles, and it used a form of animation known as rotoscoping that made the animation more realistic looking, and it added an extra layer of precision when it came to the gameplay. Rotoscoping was used in a handful of other games, most notably Out of This World and the original Prince of Persia. The game will receive a 1995 sequel called Fade to Black. This would come to the MS-DOS in 1995 and the original PlayStation the following year. The game would even come to Dreamcast in 2018 thanks to pixel art. The game was a departure from the original Flashback in that it was a 3D action game. In 2003, Delphine would attempt to create a third game in this series, entitled Flashback Legend, that will be a Game Boy Advance exclusive that returned the game to its 2D side-scrolling roots. Unfortunately, it would be cancelled as the developers went bankrupt. After that, a remake of the original game would hit the Xbox Live Arcade in 2013, thanks to developer Vector Cell, although this wasn't received very well. Here's hoping that Flashback 2 can finally do the original game justice when it hits the PC, PlayStation, and Xbox platforms later this year, with a Switch release due in 2023. Sony didn't have much of a presence at this year's Summer Games Fest. That's to be expected as they pretty much skipped out on E3 the past few years. Still, Naughty Dog was on hand to reveal the long-rumored PlayStation 5 remake of The Last of Us. And it's on its way for this year, so if you missed the original PlayStation 3 release, or the PlayStation 4 remaster, you now have one more chance to check this game out. It should be noted that Sony accidentally leaked news of this game via PlayStation Direct before it was officially confirmed. In addition, the long-awaited Last of Us 2 multiplayer will be launching as its own separate game. We'll learn more about both of these, no doubt, as the months progress. Also, as you know, an HBO adaptation is in the works, starring Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey as Joel and Ellie, respectively. Both actors were actually on hand at the Summer Games Fest. So, if you weren't turned off by The Last of Us 2, then there's quite a few things to look forward to. Marvel Midnight Suns. That Sun spelled S-U-N-S, by the way, is a collaboration between Marvel and 2K Games that's due October 7th on all major platforms. We learned a little bit more about the game during the Summer Games Fest. A trailer revealed that Spider-Man will be one of the many characters that players can team up with. The trailer also revealed a number of corrupted heroes and villains, including Venom, the Hulk, and the Scarlet Witch, that players will have to do battle with. Interestingly, the Scarlet Witch was also shown among the heroes that the players can join. So that indicates that something happens that leads to her becoming corrupted, or maybe she starts out corrupted and that players will have to free her. For those unfamiliar, Marvel Midnight Suns, which was announced last year, allows players to team up with several familiar heroes such as Captain America, Wolverine, and Blade as they take on Lilith, the Mother of Demons. The game is developed by Firaxis, the developers behind Civilization and XCOM. The game is inspired by the Midnight Suns comics, by the way that's S-O-N-S, that were published by Marvel during the 90s. These comics featured more occult related characters such as Ghost Rider, Morbius, and Blade the Vampire Hunter. Hopefully, the game will provide players the same level of mystical Marvel excitement. I'm definitely going to check it out when it releases this fall. As you know, Starfield and Redfall have been confirmed for next year. Also, Forza Motorsport has a release window of the first half of 2023. So with that, Xbox fans finally know what this year's biggest exclusive titles will be, and those are Pentiment, As Dusk Falls, and version 1 of Grounded. All kidding aside, I'll get to those later. However, the biggest story is that we finally got our first look at the gameplay for both Starfield and Redfall, and we got an extended look at Forza Motorsport. For Starfield, we learned a lot about its gameplay, combat, and customization. Starfield promises to be huge in scope, with over 100 solar systems and over 1,000 planets for players to explore. They can also customize their ships. Like in other Bethesda games, players can either stick to the main story or focus on exploring the game's world, or in this case, galaxy. I was a huge fan of Morrowind and Oblivion back in the days with their big open worlds. I wouldn't even do anything with the main storyline for the longest. Instead, I would spend a lot of time just exploring and doing side quests. It looks like Starfield has that same style of gameplay where I can just lose myself in the game's world. We also got to look at the game's customization. Not only will players be able to customize the look of their ships, but they can also hire a crew for them. They can also set up distant outposts and bases that they can hire staff for. The character creator also looks to be huge and extensive. Players can choose their background along with their traits. Not only that, there are tons of customization options when it comes to face and body type. Again, this is going to be another one of those things where I tend to spend hours just to recreate myself. Of course, my main concern is if this game will end up too ambitious for its own good. My biggest issue with open world games is that too many of them tend to have tons of wide open spaces with nothing to do for the sake of having a big open world. And this even includes games like Oblivion and Morrowind, which I liked. And with Starfield promising so many planets, this could lead to more of that. Also, what is this doing to separate itself from similar games such as Elite Dangerous and No Man's Sky? But it looks like we'll be learning more about the game throughout the next several months, and we'll be able to see for ourselves when the game launches early next year. It looks like that if they do this right, then this could be next year's Elder Scrolls, which is a game that launched in the early part of the year and ended up blowing everyone away. Now let's talk about Redfall. When the game was first announced, it was largely written off as a Left 4 Dead clone, but with vampires. Thankfully, the gameplay that was shown at the Xbox showcase looks more akin to Borderlands with its looting and co-op. Players will explore the town of Redfall, which is a fictional Massachusetts town which has been taken over by vampires. Players will have a variety of weapons and abilities that they can use on their enemies. Players will not only fight against the vampires, but a group of cultists who worship the vampires. The entire town will be fully explorable, and the game looks to have Arcane's similar brand of supernatural sci-fi stealth action gameplay that was made famous by games like Dishonored, Prey, and the more recent Deathloop. Of course, we're going to learn more about this game in the months coming, but I can't wait to see it. As for Forza, we already know that the game will run at 4K and 60 frames per second. However, it was also revealed that the game will feature ray tracing, realistic vehicle destruction, improved physics, and a full day and night cycle. The game will no doubt also contain the extensive car customization and a huge car selection that the Forza series is known for. If Turn 10 can deliver on the gameplay, fans will be in for a treat when the game launches next year. For now, I guess I got Horizon 5 along with Dirt to get my racing fix. So while there are no big name games coming to Xbox this year, and there were no updates on Fable, Avowed, or Perfect Dark, next year looks like it's going to be a good year for Xbox owners. A lot is riding on the success of these three games, not only for the Xbox brand, but for the Bethesda partnership as far as those first two games are concerned, and of course for Game Pass. While we didn't get a look at Avowed, we did get a look at Obsidian's next masterpiece, Pentiment. So while it's not exactly New Vegas 2, it's still got an interesting looking premise. Pentiment is a 2D narrative-based game that's created by Pillars of Eternity's Josh Sawyer. The game has a unique art style that's based on medieval art paintings, and it takes place in 16th century Germany. Playing as an artist named Andreas Mahler, you set out to solve a series of murders that take place over a 25-year span while also attempting to build a life for yourself. Players will be able to choose Andreas' background, and every decision you make will affect the game's outcome. The game is set to release this November on Xbox One, Series X, PC, and Steam. So it's not exactly the big AAA exclusive that people are hoping for. Still, it's got that quirky sort of style that will appeal to fans who want something a bit different. Speaking of Obsidian, Grounded, the survival crafting title that's been in preview status for almost 2 years, and it's pretty much the closest we'll ever get to a game based on Honey I Shrunk the Kids, will be entering version 1.0 this December. The game will feature all the updates from the preview, along with new areas, and a storyline that will explain why the kids ended up shrank. Like Pentiment, this isn't exactly the kind of thing that players expect from Obsidian, as they got famous for making computer RPGs. Still, Grounded was a surprisingly fun game, and it had one of the more unique takes on the survival crafting genre. If you haven't played it, then the version 1 release will be the perfect time to do so. Finally, As Dusk Falls, developed by Interior Night and slated for release next month, could be a sleeper hit. Originally announced in 2020, the game is a narrative title with a unique art style. Taking place across the span of 30 years, the game will deal with some heavy themes such as mental health and suicide. Players will make choices that shape the game's plot, and different playthroughs can have vastly different outcomes. The game is multiplayer, and additional players can join in using controllers or a smartphone app. As a matter of fact, the game also contains Twitch integration, so viewers can interact with streamers who play the game. Now, the gameplay style is similar to games such as Heavy Rain. As a matter of fact, Carolyn Marshall, the CEO of Interior Night, was the lead on Quantic Dream's Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls, and it's going to be interesting to see how this game will measure up to them. Of course, this is the type of game that won't appeal to everybody, but if you're looking for something different, then this is something you'll want to check out when it's released next month on July 19th. And of course, all 3 of these games will be hitting Game Pass on day 1. Riot Games, publisher of League of Legends and Valorant, has announced that they are forming a partnership with Microsoft that will see their games come to Game Pass. Later this year, League of Legends, Wild Drift, Valorant, Legends of Runeterra, and Teamfight Tactics are all coming to Game Pass with all the in-game heroes and champions unlocked. This is obviously for PC only, but it looks like there could also be additional perks coming for each game for Game Pass owners, or rather subscribers. This could be the perfect incentive for new players to check these games out. On the other side of the ocean, Microsoft finally confirmed that the legendary game developer Hideo Kojima will be working with Xbox Game Studios on an all-new title. Obviously, development is still very early on in stages, that's if it even began at all, and given Kojima's work style, it's going to be a while before we see it. I'm talking about years. Still, it's exciting to see what the creator of Metal Gear Solid and Death Stranding has in store for Xbox gamers. Xbox owners who love Japanese role-playing games will be glad to hear that Persona 5 Royal, the upgraded version of the 2019 PlayStation 4 game, will be coming to both Xbox One and Series X for the very first time. Not only that, but Persona 4 Golden and Persona 3 Portable will also be coming to Xbox as well. Even better, all 3 games will be coming to Game Pass on day 1. While Persona 5 will hit the console on October 21st, there's no date for the other 2. For the uninitiated, the Persona games are spin-offs from the Shin Megami Tensei series. They are Japanese role-playing games that take place in modern-day Tokyo instead of the usual fantasy and sci-fi settings that you usually see in the genre. You often play as a high school student and you have to deal with classes and home life along with enemies. The persona refers to a psychic being that is linked to your character. The last Persona game to hit an Xbox platform was Persona 4 Ultimax, which was a fighting game spin-off that was released on the Xbox 360. Players who never got the chance to play these games now have the perfect opportunity to experience this series. Speaking of Shin Megami Tensei, Soul Hackers 2, another Shin Megami Tensei spin-off, is also headed to Xbox, along with the PC and PlayStation platforms this August. So, while there are no big AAA titles coming to Xbox this year, there are updates for last year's big AAA release, which is not named Halo Infinite, and the one that dropped the year before that. So while Forza Motorsport is on deck for next year, there are plenty to tide Xbox racing fans over this year. Arriving this July 19th, the Hot Wheels expansion will be coming to Forza Horizon 5, bringing with it 10 Hot Wheels vehicles, 4 new areas to explore, a campaign, and Hot Wheels themed additions to the Forza Horizon 5 event creator. The expansion will be available as either a standalone purchase or as part of the expansion's bundle or the premium add-on bundle. If Flight Simulator is your thing, you got some things to look forward to as well. Along with the recent World Update and last month's Top Gun expansion, Microsoft Flight Simulator 40th Anniversary Edition will be coming to console, PC, and mobile cloud streaming this fall, and will be free for owners who already have Flight Simulator or are subscribed to Xbox Game Pass. In addition, a Halo Infinite Pelican was added to the game, and existing Flight Simulator owners can get it for free. The Anniversary Edition will contain classic airports and planes from Microsoft Flight Simulator X, along with Flight Simulator 2004. Also, the game will be getting helicopters, airliners, and gliders, all of which have been requested by fans. Since its 2020 launch, Flight Simulator has consistently been one of Microsoft's best performing titles and is a big part of the success of Game Pass. Updates like these are only going to make it bigger. Okay, last Xbox related update, I promise. So 2 hit PC games from last year are going to be hitting consoles, starting with the Xbox. Naraka Bladepoint will be coming to Xbox Series X later this week on June 23rd, and will be cross-compatible with the PC version. In addition, the game will also receive a campaign mode, where players will team up to take on enemies and bosses in a series of scenarios, with more being added in the future. Naraka Bladepoint is a battle royale game that emphasizes parkour and melee combat over firearms. The game has a selection of customizable heroes, each with their own abilities and skill sets, with more added regularly. Since the game's release last August, the game has reached a player base of 10 million, and the console release, along with the new additions, will help the game grow even further. Valheim, the Viking-themed crafting game, will also be coming to Xbox later this year. Developed by the 5-man team at Iron Gate, Valheim took players by storm after its release last year. Though it's still got ways to go as far as its roadmap, this is a Steam Early Access title after all, the game is still a hit with fans. Valheim's console release will coincide with an update called Mistlands, which will add new content to the game. The game will also feature crossplay and cross-progression. Like with Naraka, the game's console release will give console players the perfect opportunity to hop on board and see what the big deal is. And of course, both games will be launching on Game Pass day 1, and it's safe to assume that the games will arrive on PlayStation platforms at some point in the future. Probably one of the most surprising games announced at the Xbox Showcase is a brand new intellectual property developed by Tecmo Koei's Team Ninja, entitled Wo Long Fallen Dynasty. The game looks to be another dark fantasy title in the vein of Neo, which was also developed by Team Ninja. However, this time, the game takes place during China's Three Kingdoms period rather than feudal Japan. No doubt you've seen the Three Kingdoms depicted many times in gaming, most notably in Tecmo Koei's own Dynasty Warriors, and more recently, Sega's Total War series. However, this will be an all-new take on the Three Kingdoms saga. The name Wolong, or Hidden Dragon, is the nickname of famed strategist Zhuge Liang. The game's trailer also depicted familiar Three Kingdoms figures, such as the fearsome Lu Bu and what looked to be Zhao Yun. The game is set to come to PC, along with PlayStation and Xbox in early 2023, with the Xbox versions launching on Game Pass Day 1. Wait a minute, where was Goat Simulator 2? Of course it doesn't exist, but then again this zaniness is par for the course as far as Coffee Stain Studios is concerned. The sequel to the 2014 sleeper hit was announced with a trailer that took aim at the terminally delayed Dead Island 2 with the Jogger. This time, instead of the Jogger and everyone around them turning into zombies, they get attacked by goats. This game will feature a new open world sandbox island known as San Angora, along with multiple customizable parts for your goat, and of course, all sorts of physics-based chaos. Players can also play multiplayer either locally or online, so 3 friends can join you in your mayhem. The game is set for release later this year on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation consoles. Activision revealed some new information about both Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4. As for Overwatch 2, a cinematic introduced a new Mad Max-inspired hero called the Junker Queen. This new tank character was introduced in a short film entitled The Wastelander, which depicted her takeover of Junkertown. The character was originally teased in a concept art from 2017 when the Junkertown map was added to the game. The game's multiplayer will go free to play on all platforms this fall, with the campaign mode being added next year. There are a number of changes planned for Overwatch 2, the biggest of which being the fact that the game is going free to play, and instead of doing loot boxes, they'll be opting for a battle pass system. Time will tell how fans will receive this new system when the game launches on October 4th. As for now, players can sign up for the closed beta that's launching on June 28th by going to the Overwatch website. In related Active Blizzard news, they revealed that the Necromancer will be the 5th and final playable class in the upcoming Diablo 4. After the controversy surrounding Diablo Immortal and its excessive monetization, there were concerns that there could be another similar monetization scheme with Diablo 4. Blizzard's Adam Fletcher would tweet the following in an attempt to assuage these fears. D4 is coming out as a full-price game built strictly for PC console audiences. The game is huge and there will be tons of content after launch for all players. Paid content is built around optional cosmetic items and eventually full expansions. We will be sharing more info soon. To me personally, I don't think this does a good job of addressing players' concerns, because to hear him tell it, there will be paid customization aspects. Unless these are part of an expansion and not piecemeal microtransactions, then paid customization shouldn't be in a full-price console game. Still, we're going to learn more about it as the months progress. On a side note, I know there's that sexual abuse lawsuit going down, but still, there's an audience for these games, and I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention them. Plus, I know people are going to jump on me about not saying anything. Finally, last week, Capcom held its own game showcase. It didn't have much that was new beside updates for Monster Hunter, Street Fighter VI, and Exoprimal, but they did pull the curtain back on the upcoming content for Resident Evil 8. Resident Evil Village Gold Edition, releasing this October 28th, will include the base game along with the Winter's expansion, which contains 3 new pieces of content. First up is Shadow of Rose, which is an all-new story that takes place 16 years after the events of the main game and will star Ethan's daughter as she travels in search of a way to remove her powers. The story will take her deep into the megamycetamine, so get ready for a more supernatural take on Resident Evil. Next up is the Mercenaries Additional Orders, an expansion to the in-game Mercenaries mode. This features new stages and new characters. Players will have the option to play as Chris Redfield or the villains Carl Heisenberg and Lady Demetrice. Finally, the game will feature a new third-person mode, which is pretty much self-explanatory. For the very first time, players can see Ethan Winters in action. The same day as the release of the DLC, the hero shooter Resident Evil Reverse will be going live. The long-awaited hero shooter was supposed to go live last year with the release of Resident Evil Village, but it ended up being indefinitely delayed. Not only that, Resident Evil 7, along with the remakes of 2 and 3, received next-generation updates on PC, Xbox Series X, and PlayStation 5. These upgrades include ray tracing and 3D enhanced audio. While they caused some issues for PC owners whose graphics cards weren't powerful enough to handle the enhancements, Capcom reactivated the vanilla versions so that way Steam users can roll them back. Between the upcoming Village DLC, the next generation updates, next year's Resident Evil 4 remake, Resident Evil fans will be eating good for the next several months. And that's not even mentioning the upcoming Netflix series. Anyway, that wraps it up for my summary of the Summer Games Fest. While those were some of the bigger announcements that came out from the past few weeks, those weren't the only announcements. So if there's anything I missed that you are looking forward to, drop it in the comments below. Also, if you like what you just saw, then feel free to click that thumbs up icon. And if you want to see more, then hit that subscribe button and click the little bell icon. That way you'll be the first to know whenever I put out new content. I like to focus on indie content as well as retro stuff, along with gaming news, so definitely subscribe and you'll get to see more videos like the one that just popped up on your screen. Anyway, until next time, I'm out of 51,000 G, kinfolk.